Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Nature channel. Tonight, we're going to follow the tiniest thread in the whole wide world. A thread so small you can barely see it, but so strong it could hold up something as big as an airplane. It belongs to the spider. Spiders have been quietly spinning their magic for millions of years, making something that no scientist has ever been able to truly copy. So get comfortable, let your shoulders drop, and let's drift together into the soft, silky world of the spider's thread. Take a slow breath in and let it go. There's nowhere to be tonight but right here. Somewhere outside your window, right now, a spider is at work. You might not see it. The night has drawn its curtain, and the world has grown still. But in a garden corner, under a leaf, between two fence posts, a tiny creature is doing something extraordinary. It is spinning a thread finer than anything your eye could follow. That thread is called silk. And silk, in the world of spiders, is not just one thing. It is many things. It is a home, a cradle, a hunting net, a lifeline, and a love letter all wrapped into one shimmering strand. Let yourself imagine the spider for a moment. It is small, perhaps no bigger than your thumbnail. Its 8 eyes catch the faintest gleam of moonlight. Its 8 legs move with a kind of slow, deliberate patience that only creatures of the night truly know. And from its body, the silk begins to flow. There is something soothing about watching a spider spin. The movements are unhurried. The silk appears as if from nowhere, pulled from the spider's own body, from tiny organs called spinnerets, tucked at the back of its abdomen. The spider does not rush. It never rushes. It simply moves, and the thread follows. The silk begins as liquid inside the spider's body, a protein soup, warm and thick, waiting quietly in tiny glands. As it passes through the spinneret, something remarkable happens. It is squeezed through a passage thinner than a human hair, and in that squeezing, in that gentle pressure, the liquid transforms. It becomes solid. It becomes silk. This transformation from liquid to thread happens in an instant, slower than a blink, faster than a thought. The spider moves one leg forward, and behind it, a thread of silk hangs in the air, catching the night. Now, here is one of the first wonders of spider silk. That single thread, so thin you could lose it against a pale sky, is 5 times stronger than steel of the same thickness. Not a little stronger, 5 times stronger. If you took a piece of steel wire as thin as a strand of spider silk, the silk would win. Every time. This is not something scientists discovered and then forgot. They have spent decades trying to understand it. Engineers dream about it. Doctors dream about it. Astronauts dream about it. And yet, for all our cleverness, we have never been able to make something that matches what the spider makes in silence, in the dark, without tools, without factories, without a single thought about how impressive it is. The spider simply spins. That is enough. Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine holding a single thread of spider silk between your fingers. You almost cannot feel it. It weighs nothing at all. It might disappear against the softness of your skin. And yet, that invisible strand is holding the world together in its own quiet way. Spider silk is also elastic. If you were to stretch it, gently, slowly, it would not snap the way steel would. It would give. It would stretch up to 40% beyond its own length before it finally let go. This combination strength and stretch together is what makes it so special. Steel is strong, but brittle. Rubber stretches but tears easily. Spider silk does both, gracefully, in a single strand no wider than a whisper. The night outside is quiet now. The garden hums with the kind of soft, low sound that only comes when everything is resting. A moth drifts past. A leaf turns over in the breeze. Somewhere, the spider adds another thread to its web, and the structure grows. A spider's web is not just beautiful, it is mathematically precise. The spiral threads are spaced with a regularity that no human hand could match without measuring tools. And each thread connects to the others at just the right angle to distribute force evenly. If one part of the web catches a heavy raindrop or a struggling insect, the whole structure flexes rather than breaks. The tension travels outward, shared, softened, absorbed. This is wisdom the spider was born with. No one taught it geometry. No one explained tension and force. It simply knows. Deep in its tiny body, the knowledge is already there, waiting to be expressed in silk. Breathe in slowly. Feel the quiet settle around you like a soft blanket. There is so much wonder in small things. A strand of silk, a patient spider, a web built in darkness, revealed only when morning dew traces every thread with drops of silver light. That moment, when you see a dew-covered web for the first time in the early morning, is one of nature's most perfect gifts. Each droplet sits on the silk like a tiny pearl. The whole web becomes a necklace hung between two leaves, trembling slightly in the first breath of the day. You might find yourself standing very still in front of it, afraid to breathe too hard and disturb something so perfect. That is the right instinct. Some things deserve to be looked at slowly, without hurry, without explanation. The spider usually is nowhere to be seen. It hides at the edge of the web or in a curl of leaf nearby, waiting, patient, utterly still. It has done its work. Now, it simply waits for the world to come to it. And the silk waits too, strong enough to hold a raindrop, gentle enough to tremble in a breath, thin enough to be almost nothing, and yet somehow, impossibly, strong enough to hold more than we can imagine. If you're enjoying this gentle journey, feel free to leave a like. It helps more sleepy souls find their way here. There's a type of spider silk that scientists call dragline silk. It is the kind the spider uses as its main structural thread, the one it hangs from, the one that forms the spokes of the wheel-shaped web, the one it trails behind it as it moves through its world. Dragline silk is the strongest of all the spider's threads, and when researchers began to measure just how strong it was, they found something that made them sit back and stare at their numbers for a long time. A rope made of spider silk, just 2 inches thick, the width of a finger, could theoretically stop a Boeing 747 in full flight, a plane that weighs close to 400,000 kilograms. Caught by a rope you could hold in one hand. The numbers don't feel real, but they are real, and they come from that same patient creature spinning in the dark garden, asking nothing of anyone, simply doing what it was born to do. The reason silk is so strong has everything to do with what it is made of. Silk is built from proteins, long coiling chains of molecules that, as they squeeze through the spider's spinneret, align themselves into tight, orderly rows. This alignment, this quiet lining up of molecule beside molecule, is what gives silk its strength. Disorder becomes order in that narrow passage. Chaos becomes thread. The spinneret itself is a marvel. Under a microscope, it looks like a tiny shower head with multiple openings from which different kinds of silk can emerge. A spider doesn't have just one type of silk. It has up to 7 different kinds, each made by a different gland inside its body, each with different properties. Some silks are sticky. Some are dry. Some are stiff. Some are stretchy. The spider chooses which silk to use the way a craftsperson chooses which tool to reach for, instinctively, perfectly, without hesitation. The sticky spiral threads of a web are made of one kind of silk coated with tiny droplets of glue. These droplets sit on the thread at perfectly even intervals, like beads on a necklace. They are what catch the insects. They are also what give the web its beautiful dew-catching quality, each bead collecting a droplet of moisture and holding it like a small, round jewel. The dry silk of the spokes, the straight lines that radiate out from the center, is a different thread entirely. It has no stickiness. The spider walks on these threads when it moves across its web, avoiding the spiral threads that would trap it. The spider knows exactly which threads to trust. This is not something it learned. It simply knows. Born knowing. The silk and the knowledge of it arrive together, inseparable. Let the thought settle gently in your mind. Imagine being born already knowing how to build your home, already knowing which threads to walk on and which to avoid, already carrying inside you everything you need to survive and create beauty at the same time. Outside, the night has grown deeper. The stars overhead are quiet. A soft wind moves through the leaves of the garden, and somewhere in that movement, a web sways gently, holding its shape, giving just enough, returning to stillness. The spider feels the vibration through its feet. Every thread is connected to its body like a string on an instrument. When something touches the web, the landing of an insect, the weight of a raindrop, even the passing of a particularly determined ant, the spider feels it, not with its eyes, with its feet, with the silk itself. The silk is not just a structure, it is a sense organ, an extension of the spider's nervous system spread wide across the garden air. The web is, in a way, the spider's largest body part. Imagine feeling the world through a net of silk stretched wide around you. Every tremor, every breath of wind, every creature that wandered close. You would know your world in a way that no pair of eyes could ever give you. You would feel it. The spider rests, the web waits. The night breathes slowly around them both. There is a word in Japanese, ma, that means the space between things, the pause, the silence. It is considered as important as the things themselves. A spider's web is full of ma, mostly empty space, connected by the finest of threads. And yet it is that empty space, held in place by silk, that makes the web what it is. Without the space, there is no web. Without the web, the space has no shape. You are resting now in your own kind of ma, the space between one day and the next, the pause between waking and sleeping, the silk-thin thread that holds you here, warm and still, at the edge of a dream. Don't forget to check the playlist. There are many more gentle journeys waiting for you there. One of the most extraordinary things about spider silk is that it is made entirely inside the spider's own body. The spider eats, flies, moths, the occasional unfortunate beetle. And from that food, it creates protein. And from that protein, without any equipment beyond its own body, it spins silk stronger than steel. This efficiency is staggering. The spider wastes almost nothing. Old webs are often eaten by the spider itself, the protein recycled back into its body, ready to become new silk. The web is not discarded. It is reclaimed, returned to the source, made again. There is a word for this kind of circular wisdom: sustainability. Though the spider has never heard the word, it has been living its principles for 380 million years. That is how long spiders have been spinning silk on this earth. 380 million years before the first factory, the first engineer, the first thread spun by human hands. When you think of how long the spider has been here, longer than the dinosaurs, longer than the earliest flowers, longer than birds, something settles in you, a feeling of scale, a sense that the world is very old and very patient and has been quietly spinning its wonders long before any of us arrived to notice them. The first spiders spun silk to wrap their eggs. Protection came before everything, before webs, before hunting, before the silken drag lines they trail through the air. There was the egg sac, round and soft, carefully constructed around the most precious thing the spider had: motherhood in silk, safety in thread. Even today, many of the most remarkable structures spiders build are made to protect their young. The egg sac is perhaps the most carefully constructed thing a spider ever makes. It can be round or flat, hard or soft, hidden or displayed. Some are wrapped in leaves, disguised as part of the plant. Some are hung in the open air, swaying gently. Some are carried everywhere by the mother, tucked under her body, never set down. The garden spider, one of the most common weavers of the classic spiral web, creates an egg sac in late autumn that she fills with hundreds of tiny eggs. She wraps them in layers of silk. First a dense inner layer for warmth, then a thicker outer layer for protection, then a papery casing to keep out the damp. She works on it for hours, turning it slowly as she spins, layering thread upon thread. When it is done, she attaches it to her web and waits nearby. As the temperatures drop, her body weakens. By the first frost, she is gone. But the egg sac remains, hanging in the cold air, perfectly insulated, perfectly still, holding inside it the next generation, sleeping through the winter in their silken house. In spring, the eggs hatch. Tiny spiders no bigger than grains of sand tumble out into the world. They are perfect miniatures of their mother, every leg already in place, every instinct already present. Within hours, they begin to spin. The silk is already in them. It was always in them. Born knowing. A soft breath moves through you. Your body is heavy and warm. The thought of those tiny spiders emerging into the spring morning, into light and dew and the first warmth of the year. There is something deeply comforting in that image. Life continuing, thread by thread. Something else the spider does with its silk: ballooning. Young spiders, and sometimes adults, climb to a high point, the top of a fence, the tip of a blade of grass, the uppermost leaf of a bush, and release a thread of silk into the air. The wind catches it, and the spider lets go. It floats, carried by the breeze on a thread so thin it is essentially invisible. A spider sailing through the sky on a fragment of silk. They have been found floating miles above the earth. They have been collected by ships far out at sea. A spider floating on nothing, going wherever the wind takes it. The natural world is full of this kind of traveling. Seeds on the wind, dandelion clocks drifting, and now spiders, small, patient, fearless, giving themselves to the air on a single thread of silk, trusting the breeze to carry them somewhere worth spinning. Let that image carry you too, just a little. The feeling of floating, weightless, held by something so light you cannot see it, moving slowly above the garden, above the trees, through the cool, quiet air. A little like the feeling of drifting off to sleep. Scientists have been trying to copy spider silk for decades. It seems like it should be possible. After all, we know what it is made of. Proteins, specific proteins called spidroins that the spider's body produces and squeezes into thread. But knowing what something is made of and being able to make it yourself are very different things. The spider's spinneret does something that no machine has been able to replicate. As the liquid silk protein passes through that narrow tube, it is exposed to a carefully controlled change in acidity and salt content. It is drawn out at precisely the right speed. These conditions, the chemistry, the pressure, the speed, all combine to create the final structure of the silk. Change any one of them even slightly, and the thread that emerges is weaker or stickier or different in some important way. Researchers have tried everything. They have put silk genes into bacteria, into yeast, into goats. Yes, goats. In one famous experiment, goats were genetically modified to produce silk proteins in their milk. The milk was harvested, the proteins extracted, and then spun into thread. The result was impressive. It was strong, flexible, and genuinely silk-like, but it was not spider silk. Not quite. Not in the way the spider makes it. Something in the spinning process, some subtlety of chemistry in that tiny spinneret, produces a material that even the best laboratories have not yet been able to match. The spider keeps its secret tucked inside its body, and it shares it with the world one web at a time, in gardens, in forests, in the corners of rooms where the light falls just right. You have probably seen a spider in your home at some point, perhaps in a corner of a window, or high on a ceiling, or somewhere in a doorway where flies might pass. These small house spiders are often not noticed until their webs catch the dust of the room, or until the light angles through them in a certain way, and suddenly the whole invisible architecture of the spider's life appears. There is a type of spider called the domestic house spider that lives almost entirely inside buildings in many parts of the world. It has adapted so thoroughly to human homes that it is rarely found outside anymore. It finds warmth here, shelter, an abundance of insects drawn by light and food. This spider builds a funnel-shaped web in corners, not the elegant spiral of the garden spider, but a flat sheet with a funnel at the center, retreating into darkness. The spider waits in that funnel, feet on the sheet, feeling for vibrations. When an insect walks onto the sheet web, the spider rushes out, grabs it, and retreats back into the funnel. It is a quiet, efficient life. The spider asks very little. It sits in its corner, it waits, it catches what it needs. It does not bother anyone, and if you leave it in peace, it keeps the flies in check with calm and total dedication. There is something companionable about a house spider once you learn to see it that way. A small, silent housemate, patient, undemanding, spinning its geometry in the corner while you go about your day. The light changes in the room as the afternoon deepens toward evening. The window glows, and in that glow, if you look, really look, you might see a single strand of silk crossing the air from one point to another, thin as thought, catching the light for just a moment before it disappears again. That thread is still there even when you cannot see it. That is the nature of silk. It exists whether or not you are looking at it, like so many quiet things in this world. If you're finding these stories restful, consider sharing them with someone who needs a little calm tonight. There is a spider in Madagascar called Darwin's bark spider. It was only discovered in 2009, which means that for all of human history before that, every war, every invention, every journey across every ocean, this spider was building its webs in the forests of Madagascar, and no scientist had ever recorded it. Darwin's bark spider builds the largest orb webs ever found. Some of its webs span rivers, stretched from one bank to the other, up to 25 meters across. The spider anchors its web to both banks and to vegetation, building a structure that can hang over moving water and catch the insects that fly across the river's surface. And to do this, the spider uses dragline silk that has been measured as the toughest biological material ever found, tougher than any other spider silk, tougher than bone or muscle, the toughest natural material known to science. A spider in Madagascar spinning bridges across rivers, holding the record for the toughest material on Earth. And we only found it 15 years ago. The world is still full of things we haven't noticed yet. That is a thought that should make you feel light, comfortable. The unknown is not something to fear. It is something to look forward to. Each year, scientists discover thousands of new species, insects mostly, but also spiders, plants, fish, even mammals. The world is larger and more varied than any encyclopedia. The world is still surprising us. Somewhere tonight, in a forest you will never visit, a spider you have never heard of is spinning a web you have never imagined. It does not need you to know about it. It has been spinning since long before humans arrived, and it will spin long after. But knowing it is there, quietly, purposefully, perfectly at work, is its own kind of comfort. The silk that Darwin's bark spider produces is 2 to 3 times tougher than any previously studied spider silk, and 10 times tougher than Kevlar, the material used in bulletproof vests. That last comparison always gets attention, because Kevlar is not a natural material. It was invented by scientists specifically to be as strong as possible. It is a human achievement, and a spider no one knew existed until recently produces something 10 times tougher. Nature has had a 380 million year head start. It is not surprising that it is ahead of us. What is surprising is how often we forget this. The forest where Darwin's bark spider lives is humid and warm. The trees are enormous and old. The river it builds its webs across moves slowly, shining in the dappled light that filters through the canopy. And somewhere at the edge of that web, on a thread anchored to an old tree root, perhaps, the spider sits and waits in the way that spiders have always waited. Still, patient, breathing with the slow rhythm of the forest. Can you feel that rhythm? The slowness of a forest at midday, the heat, the green light, the distant sound of water, the sense that time here moves differently, that an hour is long and full, and a day is something to be inhabited rather than spent. Let that rhythm find you now. Let your breathing slow to match it. In through your nose, cool and quiet. Out through your lips, warm and soft. The spider waits. The forest breathes. The river moves. The silk holds. There is a type of spider silk that glows, not brightly, not in a way that would light a room or catch your eye across a field, but under ultraviolet light. Some spider silks fluoresce, emitting a soft blue-white glow that makes the threads shimmer against the darkness. Scientists believe this glow may actually attract insects. Many insects can see ultraviolet light that is invisible to human eyes. To them, the world is painted with colors we cannot imagine. And to them, certain webs may appear to glow invitingly, lit from within like a lantern in the forest. The spider's trap may look to its prey like a flower, or like the shimmer of water, or like some other source of light that insects instinctively move toward. By the time they realize what they have found, they are already part of the web. There is a kind of poetry in this if you let yourself see it. The spider creates something that is beautiful to those who encounter it, beautiful enough to draw them close. The beauty is purposeful, but it is beauty all the same. Silk is also used by spiders in ways that have nothing to do with catching food. Male spiders of many species use silk as part of their courtship. A male will weave a small special web called a sperm web and deposit sperm onto it, then draw it up into his body again in preparation for finding a mate. This intricate miniature structure, built and used and gone in the space of a few minutes, is as carefully made as any hunting web. Some male spiders also wrap gifts for the female. Insects bundled in silk, presented as an offering. The silk package is carefully made, tightly wrapped, neat, appealing. The female accepts the gift, and while she is occupied unwrapping it, the male completes his courtship. Silk as a gift. Silk as a promise. In some species, the male wraps himself in silk for protection during the encounter. A fragile, hopeful little gesture, wrapping yourself in your own best thread in the hope that it might be enough. There are also spiders that use silk to communicate, leaving chemical signals on their threads, pheromones that carry messages to other spiders who come close. A web can say, "This territory is taken," or "I am here, I am ready," or simply, "I have been here." The silk remembers. Your room is quiet now. The night has wrapped around the house like a second wall. Outside, the garden is sleeping, the flowers closed, the birds still, the insects move to their own nighttime rhythms. And somewhere in that garden, or perhaps in a corner of your home, a spider is doing what spiders have always done. It is spinning, slowly, steadily, one thread at a time. There is something deeply reassuring about that. The knowledge that while you are resting, the world is still at work, not with urgency or noise, but with the patient, quiet craft of creatures who have always known what they are doing. The web grows thread by thread. The night deepens. Your breathing slows. Don't forget, there are more stories on the playlist, ready for whenever you need them. Silk is not only made by spiders. Other creatures spin silk too, and this shared ability, scattered across so many different animals, speaks to how useful, how fundamental, how perfect a material silk is. Silkworms, of course, are famous. The silkworm is not a worm at all, but the caterpillar of the silk moth, Bombyx mori. It spins its cocoon from a single continuous thread of silk, sometimes up to 900 meters long, wrapping itself in layer after layer until it is completely enclosed, safe inside its silken house while it transforms. Humans discovered this thread more than 5,000 years ago in China. The story goes that a cocoon fell into the tea of a royal consort, and as she lifted it out, the thread began to unravel. She followed the thread and found that it went on and on, impossibly long from something so small. And so sericulture, the art of silk production, was born. For centuries, the source of silk was China's most carefully guarded secret. The penalty for revealing it, or for smuggling silkworm eggs out of the country, was death. The Silk Road, that ancient network of trade routes connecting China to the Mediterranean and beyond, took its name from this one material, traded across thousands of miles, crossing deserts and mountains, changing hands dozens of times before it reached the fingers of someone in Rome or Constantinople, who would unfold it and marvel at how light, how smooth, how impossibly fine it was. And yet, for all its history, all its luxury, all its trade, silkworm silk is not as strong as spider silk, not even close. Silkworm silk is beautiful and smooth and has its own extraordinary properties, but the spider makes something stronger and lighter and more elastic, and does it without fanfare, without trade, without any human knowing about it for most of history. The spider simply spins. Other silk spinners include lace wings, which wrap their eggs in silk threads so that they hang in the air like tiny flags, out of reach of predators. Caddisfly larvae build cases of silk and stones at the bottom of streams, little houses assembled from the riverbed and bound together with thread. Mites, fleas, some beetles, all have their own versions of silk, each tuned to a slightly different purpose. Even humans, in a sense, try to spin silk. We wear it, use it, have built fortunes from it, have dreamed of replicating it for decades. We are drawn to silk the way we are drawn to all things that are at once fragile and impossibly strong. It speaks to something in us. The night air is soft. The window lets in a ribbon of cool, carrying the scent of the garden, damp earth, a trace of flowers, the faintest green smell of leaves. You breathe it in without trying. Your body knows what to do. Rest. Breathe. Let the silk-thin thoughts carry you gently. In the laboratories where scientists study spider silk, the work happens at a very small scale, under microscopes, with tools measured in nanometers. The researchers look at individual protein molecules and try to understand exactly how they fold, how they align, how they become, together, something so much stronger than any of them alone. This is the alchemy of spider silk, proteins that, on their own, are fragile and ordinary, but arranged just so, pulled through a spinneret at the right speed, under the right conditions, they become extraordinary. The key is something called a beta sheet crystal. Inside the silk thread, protein chains fold into flat, rigid sheets, stacked together with a precision that would be remarkable in any manufacturing process. Between these rigid sheets are stretchy, flexible regions, softer protein coils that can extend and contract. It is this combination, rigid and flexible, hard and soft, structure and give, that makes silk what it is. Engineers would call this a composite material, a material that combines different properties in a single structure. The body of the silk thread is, in a sense, already a kind of engineering marvel, a miniature composite assembled at the molecular level, built by a creature with no knowledge of material science. And it weighs almost nothing. A full-size spider web, all the silk in it gathered together, might weigh less than a single raindrop. The web can hold many things heavier than itself. A trapped insect, a collection of dewdrops, the occasional falling leaf. It does this not by being rigid and resisting force, but by being flexible and distributing it. The web deflects, it gives, it absorbs. This is a design principle that engineers have been learning from nature for decades. In buildings, in bridges, in airplane wings, flexibility is often more important than pure strength. A tree that can sway in a storm survives where a rigid post might snap. A web that gives when the wind pushes holds where a solid sheet would tear. The spider again knew this first. Something settles in you when you think about this, the simplicity of the principle. Give a little, flex, distribute. Trust the whole structure rather than trying to resist everything at one point. This works for webs. It works for trees. It works in its own way for us too. The places where we allow a little give in our plans, in our expectations, in our understanding of how the day will go, are often the places where we are strongest. Breathe out slowly. Let your body find its own kind of flex. A spider web in the wind is one of the most beautiful sights in the natural world. The whole structure moves as one, swaying, spiraling, returning, each thread pulling on every other thread. No part of the web entirely separate from the rest. A community of silk. And through all that movement, the spider rests. It has made its home well. It trusts the silk. There is a spider in the American Southwest called the black widow. It has a reputation that precedes it, wrapped up in its name and its markings, the red hourglass on its black abdomen, the stories told about it. But even here, in this much feared spider, the silk is the more remarkable story. Black widow silk is among the strongest produced by any spider. The black widow spins a web that, unlike the elegant geometric orb of garden spiders, is a tangle, a three-dimensional chaos of threads crossing at every angle, attached to the ground and to surrounding objects, pulling in all directions. It looks, to human eyes, like a mess. But it is not a mess. Every thread is under tension. Every attachment point is load-bearing. The tangle has a structure that distributes force in 3 dimensions rather than 2. If you pull on one thread, the others tighten in response, redistributing the stress. It is, in a way, more robust than the elegant orb web, harder to destroy, easier to repair. The black widow also produces her egg sacs with particular care. They are round and tough, with a papery outer layer reinforced with silk. The mother guards them ferociously. This is not a creature indifferent to its young. This is a mother sitting beside the most precious thing she has ever made, ready to defend it with everything she is. Strip away the fear, and the black widow is this, a small creature doing her best, spinning her strongest silk, protecting her family in a tangle of threads that no one understands at first glance, but that works perfectly for everything she needs. The night has deepened. Perhaps it is past midnight now. The house is very quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight, not empty, but full of the sounds of sleeping, a breath, a shift, the creak of a wall cooling in the night air. You are somewhere in that quiet, resting, your body heavy and warm, your thoughts soft and slow, like threads drifting in still air. There are spiders outside your window right now, probably several, building or resting or waiting. Their webs catch the moonlight or don't, depending on the angle. They are there whether you know it or not. This is not a frightening thought. It is a comforting one, once you feel it that way. The natural world carries on its work, regardless of whether we are watching. The webs are spun, the silk holds, the night passes. We are held by so many invisible threads, the warmth of the air, the breath of the people sleeping nearby, the quiet presence of creatures in the garden, the long, slow turning of the earth. None of these things ask anything of you tonight. If you're finding comfort here, a like or a comment means a great deal. It helps keep this channel growing, one sleepy listener at a time. There is a country in Madagascar, the same island where Darwin's bark spider spins its river-spanning webs, where humans once harvested spider silk and wove it into cloth. It was not a commercial enterprise. It was an art project, a labor of decades. A team of people spent years collecting golden orb weaver spiders from the forests of Madagascar, extracting silk from them carefully without harming them, and then weaving the silk into a textile. The result, completed in the early 2000s, was a cloth of extraordinary beauty. Golden in color, since the silk of the golden orb weaver is naturally golden. A pale, warm amber that catches light the way honey does. The cloth was large enough to be a shawl. It took more than 1 million spiders to produce. Each spider was handled carefully and released after its silk was collected. The whole project was a kind of conversation between human craft and natural material, a collaboration, strange and slow and patient. The golden silk has a color that no dye could perfectly match. It is the color of late afternoon sunlight through leaves, of warm amber, of the particular quality of light just before evening turns to dusk, when the world seems, for a moment, to be made entirely of gold. That color comes from pigments the spider produces in its silk glands. No one knows exactly why. Perhaps it is camouflage. The webs of golden orb weavers are often built in sunlit clearings where a golden web might be less visible. Perhaps it is something else entirely. Perhaps the spider simply makes gold because it can. The golden orb weaver is a large spider. The females, which build the webs, can have a body as long as your thumb and legs that span many centimeters. Their webs can last for years, reinforced and repaired over and over. They are social in their way. Sometimes dozens of webs built close together, sharing anchor points, overlapping at the edges. Walking through a forest where golden orb weavers live is like walking through a gallery, web after web, each a perfect golden wheel, catching the light, each spider at her center like a jewel set in amber. The webs hum faintly in the wind, not a sound you hear with your ears, but a vibration you feel in your chest, a low, fine trembling, and the light through the webs. That is the thing. The light through a golden spider web in the early morning is one of the most beautiful sights in any forest. The threads divide the light into tiny prismatic pieces. Each strand holds its own small rainbow. The whole web is a filter through which the world becomes slightly more magical for a moment. Let that image stay with you. A morning forest, golden light, a web that turns the air into something you can see. You walking slowly through it, not wanting to disturb anything, breathing quietly, feeling the day beginning. That is a good way to start any day, slowly, carefully, noticing the light. Spider silk has inspired many human inventions, though we have not yet managed to replicate the original. But the inspiration has led to real advances in material science and medicine. Silk-based materials are being researched for use in medicine, particularly in the repair of tendons and ligaments in the body. Tendons are remarkable structures themselves, connective tissues that must be both strong and flexible, transmitting the force of muscles to bones without snapping under repeated strain. This is very similar to what spider silk does: strong, flexible, resilient under repeated load. Researchers have created experimental sutures from silk proteins, surgical threads that are not only strong enough to hold wounds closed, but that the body does not reject. Natural silk is biocompatible. The human body does not identify it as foreign in the way it might identify a synthetic material. It tolerates silk. In some cases, it accepts it. This opens the possibility of surgical implants made partly from silk, scaffolds on which new tissue can grow, structures that would support healing and then gently dissolve as the body's own tissues strengthened to take over. Temporary support made from permanent silk, the body healing itself, helped by a thread no thicker than what a garden spider spins on an October morning. There are researchers working on silk-based materials for optical devices because silk has properties that interact interestingly with light. It can be made transparent. It can be shaped at very small scales. These properties have been explored in experimental lenses and sensors that could work inside the human body. The spider's thread, translated through decades of research, reinterpreted in laboratories, has begun to find its way into human medicine, not as spider silk directly, not yet, but as an inspiration, a blueprint, a direction towards something we are still learning to understand. Meanwhile, the spider spins on, unconcerned, still making the original, the real thing, with perfection it was born with. The night is very still now. You can hear your own breathing, in, out, slow and even, the rhythm of rest, the rhythm your body has always known. Somewhere in the world, in a rainforest, on a cliff face, in the corner of an old stone building, a spider is spinning. The silk flows from its body in a thin, steady stream. It catches the light for a moment before becoming part of the web. The spider moves on to the next point, trailing its thread, knowing exactly where it is going. It does not rush. It never has. It has all the time in the world, or at least all the night. Check the playlist when you're ready for more. There are gentle stories for every kind of night. The oldest spider silk ever found was preserved in amber, fossilized tree resin that captured the silk, and sometimes the spider itself, in the moment of its creation. Some of these amber specimens are over 100 million years old. Inside them, perfectly preserved, are threads of silk that look exactly like modern spider silk. The same thickness, the same structure as far as scientists can tell, the same diameter, the same translucency. 100 million years, and the spider had already perfected its craft. Nothing needed to change. The silk was already as good as it could be, already stronger than anything else alive, already serving its purpose with flawless efficiency. In one piece of amber, researchers found silk threads with the same droplets of glue spaced along them that modern sticky spiral threads have today. The same beaded pattern the same spacing, the same purpose. 100 million years ago, a spider was catching insects with exactly the same technology that spiders use tonight. There is something almost impossible to hold in your mind about deep time. 100 million years. 65 million years before that, the dinosaurs would disappear. 99.5 million years before that moment, the very first small mammals were creeping through the undergrowth. And the spider was already here, already spinning, already perfect. The thread that connected that long ago amber spider to the garden spider outside your window tonight is unbroken. An unbroken thread of silk, of species, of life, stretching across 100 million years of Earth history. The same protein, the same spinneret, the same patient craft. We are so new in comparison. Humans, modern humans, have been here for perhaps 300,000 years. That is the merest blink in deep time. The spider has had a 380 million year head start. But here we are, lying in the dark, thinking about spider silk, marveling at it, trying to understand it and learn from it. That, perhaps, is what we do. We notice things, we wonder. We feel something when we hear about a thread of silk preserved in amber for 100 million years, still perfect, still strong, still itself. That feeling is called awe. It is a gentle feeling when you let it be. Not overwhelming or frightening, just large. Just the sensation of understanding, briefly, how much larger the world is than any single moment in it. Let the awe be quiet. Let it settle like dust after a soft rain. Let it rest inside you, warm and still. The amber glows in your imagination, golden, the spider inside it, perfectly still. The silk threads catching the light of a sun that set 100 million years ago. Some spiders do not build webs at all. Jumping spiders, small, round-eyed, alert creatures, hunt on foot. They stalk their prey the way a cat does, moving slowly, freezing when the prey looks their way, then leaping with astonishing accuracy onto whatever they were stalking. But even jumping spiders use silk. Every jump they make is belayed. Before a jumping spider leaps, it attaches a silk thread to whatever surface it is standing on. As it flies through the air, and jumping spiders can leap many times their own body length, the silk pays out behind it. If the jump goes wrong, the spider is not lost. It is held by its thread, swinging in the air, able to climb back up and try again. This silk safety line is called a drag line, and the jumping spider deploys it automatically, without thinking, every single time it moves through open space. It never makes a jump without first attaching its thread. Never takes a risk without a safeguard. The jumping spider is also remarkable for its eyes. It has 8, like all spiders, but its 2 large front-facing eyes are enormous by spider standards, huge, clear, almost puppy-like in their directness. These eyes can move within the spider's head, focusing and tracking the way our eyes do. The jumping spider looks at you, really looks at you, in a way that most insects and spiders do not. When researchers show jumping spiders patterns and shapes, the spiders respond, investigating, reacting, remembering. They have demonstrated what appears to be genuine curiosity, not just reflexes, a small, active interest in the world. A jumping spider will stop and examine a photograph of another jumping spider. It will react differently to photographs of prey and to photographs of uninteresting objects. It appears to assess and think in whatever way a spider can think. This is not so strange when you sit with it. Life finds ways to be aware. Even in a small spider leaping from leaf to leaf on a summer morning, trailing its silk safety line, there is something paying attention, something noticing, something that has its own small experience of the world. Tonight, in your room, in your house, on your street, there are hundreds of small lives noticing the world. The spider in the corner feeling the air through its web, the moth at the window drawn by light, the earthworm turning slowly through the dark soil of the garden, the spider beneath the leaf, having already caught its dinner, resting now. A whole world of small awarenesses, each one in its own moment, each one doing exactly what it is here to do, and you, in your own moment, doing exactly what you are here to do right now, resting. There is a particular quality to the light that passes through a spider web. It does something that glass and water and crystal all try to do, and none of them quite manages. When sunlight or moonlight or the diffuse gray light of an overcast morning passes through the fine threads of a web, it is not reflected, not entirely. The light bends around the threads, diffracts, spreads into a faint prismatic quality that makes the edges of the thread seem to glow. The web does not shine. It gleams very gently, as if the light is not just passing through the web, but becoming part of it for a moment. This effect is most visible in the morning with dew on the threads. Each bead of water is a tiny lens, concentrating the light and sending it back as a small, perfect point of brightness. A web covered in dew and morning light is a galaxy. Hundreds of small stars, each one sitting precisely where the spider placed a droplet of glue, each one making light out of the thin material of the morning. Photographers know this. Anyone who has ever tried to photograph a dewy web knows how difficult it is to capture what the eye sees. The camera flattens it. The depth disappears. The three-dimensional quality of the web, the way it exists in space between two planes suspended, becomes a two-dimensional pattern. The magic is harder to find in a photograph. Some things you have to see in person. You have to stand there with the cool morning air on your face, with the dew still on the grass, with the particular stillness of early morning when the birds have stopped their first chorus and the world has not yet decided to begin properly. You have to stand there and look and let the web be what it is and feel what that does to you. The web will be gone by midday, often. The dew evaporates. The spider may roll up the sticky spiral threads and re-eat them, leaving only the structural framework. The web becomes invisible again, dry and sparse and easy to miss. By evening, the spider may be rebuilding, spinning new spiral threads in the last light. This is the rhythm of the web, made in darkness or early morning, revealed by dew, dissolved by warmth, made again. Every single night, all over the world, spiders are rebuilding their webs. Millions of them, trillions of threads, spun in silence, in gardens and forests and cliff faces and caves and the corners of your windows, in places you have never been and places you pass every day without noticing. The silk is always there. You just have to look at the right angle, with the right light, in the right moment of quiet. That quiet is available to you right now. You are already in it. You have been moving into it this whole story, thread by thread, breath by breath. One more gentle stretch of story to go. let yourself settle in. And if you've stayed this far, please do leave a comment and let us know what you think. We read them all. There is a word that architects and engineers use: tensegrity. It describes a structure held in shape by the balance of tension and compression, where some elements are being pulled and others are being pushed, and the whole thing holds because all those forces are in equilibrium. A spider web is a perfect example of tensegrity. Every thread is under tension. Every attachment point holds by balancing the pull of the threads against it. If you remove a thread, the whole web shifts, adjusting, compensating, finding a new equilibrium. The web does not simply fall apart, it adapts. The spider itself is, in a way, built on this principle. Its legs work by hydraulic pressure, not by muscles pulling tendons as ours do, but by the pressure of fluid against the walls of the leg joints, controlled by the spider's body. The spider does not have extensor muscles in its legs. When it relaxes the pressure, the legs curl inward. This is why a dead spider's legs fold up. The pressure gone, the legs return to their natural curled state. In life, the spider controls the tension constantly, not with great effort. It is not tiring. It is simply the state of being alive for a spider. A continuous, quiet balance of forces. A tensegrity being, moving through a tensegrity world of its own making. There is something in this that speaks to rest. The spider, when it is still, is not fighting anything. It is not holding on with effort or resisting with strain. It is balanced. Every force met by an equal and opposite force. The equilibrium of rest. Your body is doing something similar right now. The warmth of the bed, the give of the pillow, the slow deepening of your breathing. These are not efforts. They are balances. Your body has always known how to find this place. You are helping it now by being still, by letting the world be quiet around you, by allowing the thoughts to slow to something barely there. The spider web holds in the dark garden, thread by thread, thread to thread. The whole structure breathing very slightly in the night air, adjusting, always in balance. You are like that too, always finding the balance, even when you don't know it, even when the day has been long or complicated or heavier than you expected. You are still here. You have carried everything this far. And now the threads are relaxing. The tension is easing. The web of the day is folding up gently. And somewhere in the cool and dark, the spider is at rest. There is a spider that lives underwater, not near water, not beside a pond or along a riverbank. Actually underwater, submerged, breathing air inside a bubble of its own making. The water spider, Argyroneta aquatica, is the only spider in the world that spends almost its entire life beneath the surface of a freshwater pond or slow-moving stream. And it does this with silk. The water spider builds a diving bell. It spins a dome of silk between the stems of underwater plants, a small, tight, dome-shaped web anchored firmly to the vegetation. Then, using the fine hairs on its abdomen that trap air like velvet traps lint, it swims to the surface, collects a bubble of air against its body, and carries it down. It releases the bubble inside the silk dome. Then it goes back up and collects another. Over several trips, the dome fills with air. The silk holds the bubble in place, a pocket of atmosphere beneath the water built by patient trips and the particular properties of spider thread. The water spider lives inside this bell It rests there, eats there, mates there, raises its young there. A small, complete world of air held in silk in the middle of a pond. The silk that forms the diving bell has to be especially water resistant, and it is. Spider silk, in general, does not absorb water the way cotton or wool does. It sheds moisture rather than soaking it in. The threads of the water spider's bell are tightly woven enough that the surface tension of water at the edges of the dome helps seal the air inside. Surface tension is one of water's quieter wonders. The way the surface of water behaves almost like a thin, flexible skin, elastic, resistible, strong enough to hold a needle if placed carefully, strong enough to support the weight of small insects walking on water. In a water spider's diving bell, surface tension and silk work together to create something that should not, by any simple logic, exist. A room of air inside a body of water. Yet there it is, has been for millions of years. The water spider, patient and small, descending into the pond with its silver bubble, adding breath to breath, building a home in the one element that should make a home impossible. This is what nature does. It finds a way where no way seemed to exist. It uses what is available, a body, some silk, the physics of water and air, and makes something extraordinary without any fuss at all. The pond at night is a different world from the garden. The surface catches the moon in broken fragments. The reeds stand very still. Below the surface, in the soft darkness of the water, the world is muffled and slow. Small creatures move through the murk. A water beetle, a diving fly, the elongated shape of a pond skater gliding on the surface film. And somewhere among the stems of water plants, a small silk dome holds its pocket of air. Inside the dome, the water spider rests, legs drawn in, body still, the air around it warm and close. The silk walls holding the water back as gently and firmly as a hand cupped around a candle flame. Let yourself imagine that stillness, the water on all sides, but no fear of it. The silk holding everything you need inside its gentle dome. The world going on outside, but the inside of the dome quiet, complete, perfectly sealed. That is what rest can feel like when you find it fully. The outside world still there, but held at a certain distance. The inside world warm and quiet and entirely yours. There is a phenomenon that happens every autumn in the northern hemisphere and in spring in the southern hemisphere, called gossamer. You may have seen it and not known its name. On still, calm days in the right season, the air seems to fill with floating threads, thin as imagination, catching the light at certain angles and then vanishing again as the angle changes. You might be walking through a field or along a country lane and feel the occasional silken touch on your face, a thread so fine you can barely feel it, but unmistakable, a cobweb from the sky. This is gossamer, the collective silk of millions of ballooning spiders filling the air with their threads as they travel. On particularly good days for ballooning, still air, light thermals, the right temperature, so many spiders take to the air at once that their threads visibly drift in waves and curtains across fields and hedgerows. The landscape takes on a draped, silvery quality, as if the world has been lightly dressed in the finest possible fabric. In some parts of the world, gossamer settles on the grass in thick, white sheets. If you were to walk through a field on a heavy gossamer morning, the grass would be carpeted in silk, every blade threaded through with the remnants of thousands of tiny journeys. The field would look as if it had been prepared for something, set for a ceremony no one organized. In Australia, there is an occasional phenomenon called angel hair, gossamer that falls in such quantities after floods that it coats entire regions in white silk, trees and fences and roads draped in a fleece of spider threads, acres and acres of it shining in the sun. Local farmers rake it from fence posts. It comes away in soft, elastic sheets. Millions of tiny spiders making their way through the air above the floodwaters to dry land, leaving their silk behind as they land. The name is right, angel hair, because there is something otherworldly about it, something that does not seem entirely of this earth. Silk from the sky, a soft white covering laid over the land, not by storm or cloud or frost, but by the collective movement of the smallest creatures imaginable. Each thread represents a spider's courage, if that word can stretch to cover such a small creature's act. The willingness to climb to the highest point available, to spin a thread into the open air, and to let go, to trust the wind. It takes a particular kind of faith to let go of the solid and trust the invisible. And yet, spiders do it constantly, not in moments of desperation, but as a natural part of their life. Young spiders balloon away from the place they hatched because the world is large and there is so much of it to discover. Ballooning is not an escape. It is an arrival, a setting out, a beginning. Breathe in, feel the air in your lungs, light and clean. You're held by the air the same way the ballooning spider is held, supported by something invisible, something you cannot see or touch, something entirely reliable. The air holds you. The dark holds you. The quiet of the night holds you. You can let go of the solid edges of the day now. Float a little. If this story is helping you rest, you might enjoy leaving a comment below. It's always lovely to hear from fellow sleepy explorers. Scientists have begun to discover that spider silk may be a remarkable conductor of certain kinds of energy. In particular, researchers have found that dry spider silk can conduct heat along its length with surprising efficiency. In some cases, conducting heat better than most metals of comparable thickness. This is extraordinary because silk is an organic material made of protein, the kind of substance we generally associate with insulation rather than conduction. Wool keeps you warm because it traps air and does not conduct heat away from your body. But spider silk, in certain configurations, moves heat along its length rather than holding it in place. The reason lies in the same molecular alignment that gives silk its strength. Those tightly ordered protein chains, lined up along the length of the fiber, create a pathway for vibration. And heat is, at its most fundamental, vibration. The molecules of the silk pass the vibration along from one to the next, like a row of children passing something hand to hand. The order is what makes the passing efficient. This property could be useful in thermal management in electronics. Tiny devices that generate heat in very small spaces and need to move that heat away before it causes damage. A silk thread, thinner than any wire, conducting heat silently and efficiently. The spider's solution to problems it never knew it was solving. There is another property of spider silk that researchers are only beginning to understand. It appears to have a natural twist built into its structure at the molecular level. The protein chains do not simply line up in straight rows. They have a slight helical quality, a long, slow spiral woven into the thread itself. This twist contributes to both the strength and the flexibility of the silk. It means that when the thread is stretched, it is not just the individual molecular bonds that are tested. It is the twist itself, unwinding slightly under tension and then returning when the tension releases. The silk remembers its shape. It wants to return to itself. There is a word for this in materials science: memory. Some materials have shape memory. They return to their original form after being deformed. Silk has a version of this. It will stretch, it will give, but then it returns as close to its original shape as the circumstances allow. Memory in a thread. The silk wants to go back to what it was. The night has its own memory. Every night, the darkness comes back, the quiet returns. The body, which has been alert and moving all day, remembers how to be still. The memory of rest is already inside you. You do not have to learn it. You have done it thousands of times. You know this feeling, the specific weight of your body settling into the mattress, the particular softness of the pillow under your cheek, the slow, reliable arrival of sleep. Your body remembers. Let it. There is a spider in the tropical forests of Central and South America called the orb weaver, and it does something at night that feels almost like performance. As the light fades, the spider comes out to build. It begins with a bridge thread, a single horizontal line from one anchor point to another, strong enough to bear the weight of what comes next. From the center of this bridge, it drops a vertical thread, forming a Y shape. Then, from that center point, it adds more radial threads, the spokes, working outward and around until it has a complete wheel of lines, perhaps 20 or more spokes, all meeting at the hub. This part of the web is not sticky. It is the scaffolding. The spider walks on these threads freely. Then comes the spiral. Starting from the outside, the spider moves inward in a slow, careful spiral, laying down the sticky thread that will actually catch its prey. As it lays each loop of the spiral, it uses a back leg to measure the distance from the last loop, feeling the tension, feeling the gap, ensuring the spacing is even. If the spacing is too wide, insects might slip through. Too narrow, and the web wastes silk and becomes too heavy. The spider measures with its body. It uses itself as the instrument of precision. When the sticky spiral is complete, the spider often eats the scaffolding spiral it laid earlier, recovering the silk, saving the energy, leaving only what is necessary. The final web is lean and efficient, every thread exactly where it needs to be. The whole process takes perhaps an hour. Some spiders build a new web every single night. They eat the old one at dusk, rest for a short while, and then rebuild from scratch in the dark. A fresh web every night, without variation. The same perfect geometry, produced without measuring tools, without planning, without the ability to step back and look at the whole picture. The spider builds from inside the web outward, feeling its way to precision. This nightly ritual, the dismantling and rebuilding, means that the silk is always fresh. Old silk loses some of its stickiness as it collects dust and dew. New silk is at its most adhesive. The spider does not patch and repair when a complete replacement is more effective. It starts again. There is a kind of peace in this approach, the willingness to let go of the old and begin fresh. No attachment to yesterday's web, however beautiful it was. Tonight's web is tonight's web. Tomorrow's will be tomorrow's. The spider does not grieve the old web. It eats it and builds something new. Something in this is worth carrying into your own rest. The day is done. Whatever it held, the good, the difficult, the unfinished, it is the old web now. You can let it go. Tomorrow will be built fresh from the same materials with the same capable hands. Tonight, there is just the dark, the quiet, the soft beginning of sleep spiraling inward. High in the mountains, where the air is thin and cold, and the trees have given way to rock and lichen and the kind of silence that has real weight to it, spiders still live, where almost nothing else can. Wolf spiders have been found at altitudes of over 6,000 meters on the slopes of the Himalayas, higher than almost any other animal except certain birds. They live in crevices in the rock, coming out on warmer days to hunt whatever tiny insects the wind carries up from the valleys below. They survive temperatures that would stop most creatures cold. They slow their metabolism almost entirely, entering a state close to hibernation, and wait for the warmth to return. Their silk does not freeze in the way that water does. The protein structure of silk is flexible enough to remain intact through the dramatic temperature changes. A web built in summer might still be hanging, intact if weathered, when the first warm days return the following spring. These mountain spiders live lives of extraordinary patience, long stretches of cold and stillness punctuated by brief seasons of warmth and activity. They have adapted not by fighting the cold, but by waiting it out, by becoming still, by trusting that warmth will return. This is adaptation in its most profound form, not changing to avoid hardship, but becoming so completely what you are that you can outlast it. There is also a species of spider that has been found in the Arctic above the tree line, where the permafrost never fully thaws. These spiders are dark-colored, absorbing heat from sunlight more efficiently than pale-colored relatives. On sunny days, when the temperature just above the dark tundra soil is warmer than the air a meter higher, these spiders crouch close to the ground, absorbing warmth from below and above simultaneously. They spin their webs close to the ground, sheltered from the wind in the small pockets of relative warmth that exist between rocks and soil. Their lives are constrained by cold and brief by necessity, and yet, in their small, dark, efficient bodies, the silk glands still function, the spinnerets still produce, the threads still hold, life insisting on itself, even at the edge of where life is possible. High above you now, the stars are doing something similar, burning in the absolute cold of space, insisting on their light, threading their brightness across distances so vast they barely make sense. Light that left those stars before humans existed, arriving tonight at your window. You are held between those two things, the spider in the cold, close to the earth, making silk in the thin mountain air, and the stars overhead, burning through the dark, and you between them, warm in your own warmth, breathing slowly. It is a good place to be. The playlist has more stories like this one, gentle, slow, full of the world's quieter wonders. Spider silk has been used by humans for thousands of years in ways that go far beyond weaving. Before modern materials in many cultures around the world, spider silk was gathered and used as a practical tool. In the Pacific Islands, Some traditional fishermen wove spider silk into the tips of fishing lures. The silk was strong enough to hold the lure together and light enough not to spook the fish. In some parts of New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, fishermen constructed fishing nets from the webs of large golden orb weaver spiders, gathering the webs carefully from the forest and stretching them over frames made of bent cane. The resulting net was light, strong, and flexible in the water. Fish could be caught in it without the net tangling or tearing. In ancient Greece and Rome, spider silk was reportedly used as a wound dressing. Placed over a cut, the fine, dense mesh of web material helped to stop bleeding. Later analysis suggests this was not simply superstition. Spider silk is antimicrobial to some degree, and its fine mesh structure does indeed help clot blood. The ancient world was practicing what modern medicine is still exploring. In the mountains of Ecuador, in the rainforest, some indigenous communities still use spider silk, gathered from large tropical spiders, to wrap around small wounds. Not as medicine exactly, but as care. The silk is clean. It holds things together. It breathes. European optical workshops of the 18th and 19th centuries used fine spider dragline silk as the crosshairs in telescopes, gun sights, and microscopes. The threads were fine enough and consistent enough in thickness to provide a reliable reference line. For a period, the crosshairs in some of the most precise scientific instruments in the world were threads spun by garden spiders. Think of that. The spider in the garden spinning its web on an ordinary morning, producing threads that would end up stretched inside a telescope trained on the moons of Jupiter. The spider who has never seen Jupiter contributing to its study. The night is very soft now. The air feels thick with quiet. The particular quality of late night air that seems to have weight to press gently against you like a hand on a shoulder. Reassuring, present. You are not alone in this quiet. The garden is full of life. The stars are full of light. The spider is at its work, and you are doing your own night work, the work of rest, which is not nothing, which is, in fact, one of the most important things you do. Sleep is not absence. It is repair. It is consolidation. It is the spider eating its old web and building fresh, clearing what is no longer needed, making room for what comes next. Let the silk of sleep gather you. There are spiders that live in sand, in the deserts of the Namib, in the dunes of the Sahara, in the red sandstone country of the American Southwest. Spiders have found a way to live in one of the most apparently inhospitable places on Earth. The trapdoor spider builds its home in the ground. It digs a tube-shaped burrow, sometimes lined with silk, and constructs at the opening a hinged door made from silk and soil and debris, designed to blend so perfectly with the surrounding ground that you could walk over it a dozen times without ever knowing it was there. The spider sits just inside the door, front legs on the silk trip threads it has laid around the entrance. When an insect touches those threads, when the vibration of footsteps travels through the silk, the trapdoor spider throws open its door and strikes. The whole action takes less time than a blink. Then the door falls closed again. The ground is smooth. Nothing appears to have happened. The silk lining of the burrow does more than simply smooth the walls. It strengthens them, holding the soil together, preventing collapse. In the desert, where the soil is dry and loose, and walls might crumble, silk is the mortar that holds the burrow together. The spider's home is a silk tube sunk into the sand. The trapdoor itself is a remarkable construction. The spider builds it layer by layer, mixing silk with soil particles in proportions that give the door just the right weight and flexibility. Too heavy, and the spider cannot throw it open quickly enough. Too light, and it will not stay shut, will not hold against the investigations of a passing predator. The silk content is calibrated by instinct to a perfect balance. The door is hinged by a thick line of silk on one side, flexible and strong. A living hinge that can open and close thousands of times without breaking. In the desert at night, the temperature drops dramatically. The air that was scorching at midday becomes cold and still. The stars appear very bright against the deep darkness. Desert nights are famous for their stars, with no moisture in the air to blur the light. The Milky Way lies across the sky like a river. Beneath that sky, in the cool sand, a trapdoor spider waits. Its door closed, its trip lines spread, its body still. It could wait all night and not mind. It could wait several nights. Patience is not something the spider practices. Patience is something the spider is. Far above it, the stars move in their slow wheel. A falling star draws a line of light and is gone. The desert breathes the cold, dry breath of nighttime, and the spider waits in its silk-lined house, belonging completely to its world. You belong completely to yours, to this room, this warmth, this darkness, this particular moment of the night that belongs only to you. The desert is vast and cold and brilliant and full of life you cannot see. And this room is small and warm and quiet and everything you need. The story ends here, but only the telling of it. The silk goes on, right now, somewhere in your garden or outside your window or in the corner of your ceiling. A spider is doing what spiders have done for 380 million years. It is spinning, thread by thread, in silence and in darkness, making something extraordinary from the substance of its own body, following an ancient knowledge that needs no instruction and no approval. The web grows in the dark, each thread connecting to the next, each connection reinforcing the whole, the structure emerging invisible in the night, waiting for the morning to reveal it. You have traveled a long way tonight, in the gentlest way, through laboratories and rainforests, down into the cold water of a pond, and up into the thin air above a Himalayan glacier, through amber that is 100 million years old, and through the golden light of a Madagascar morning. Thread by thread, story by story, you have been held by something fine and strong and incredibly patient. The silk was always there, in every garden you have ever walked through, in every dewy morning you have ever stood still in every corner of every room you have ever lived in, an invisible architecture of extraordinary strength built by the smallest hands, asking nothing. The spider does not know what it means to us. It does not know that we marvel at its silk, that we have spent decades trying to copy it, that ancient fishermen wove it into their nets, and ancient doctors pressed it against wounds, and ancient astronomers stretched it across the lens of their telescopes. The spider just spins. That has always been enough. It will always be enough. Let the thought of that spinning be the last clear thought you carry into sleep, something patient and steady and ongoing, something that doesn't need you to understand it or explain it or do anything about it. something that simply is, spinning in the dark, thread by thread, building its quiet miracle while the world rests. Your breathing has slowed. Your body is heavy and warm. The edges of the day have blurred into something soft and shapeless. The night holds you the way silk holds a dewdrop, gently, without effort, with no intention of letting go. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the last threads of waking release. The web is built. The spider rests. The silk holds everything. You are safe. You are warm. You are held by threads thinner than a whisper and stronger than steel. Sleep now. Good night. Thank you for being here tonight. If you found something restful in this story, a like or a comment is always welcome. It helps other sleepy souls find their way here. And when you're ready for the next journey, the playlist is waiting for you. Rest well. We'll be here. The Sleepy Nature Channel, Sweet Dreams, from the world of the spider's thread.